Joining us for this segment is a good friend, somebody who I have had conversations with in the past on this program, and it's about finances. And knowing that here we are, normally I like to have these particular conversations earlier in the year, almost kind of like a New Year's type of a thing. But let me tell you, sometimes our schedules get busy. But so the initiative that we have today is we're going to talk about spring clean your finances. And who would I bring in? Or who would I want to talk to? None other than Paula Harris, who is not only an author, but she's also a co-founder and director of Cornerstone Investments. Paula, welcome back to the program.
Kevin, thank you so much. I always love coming on with you. We have the best conversations.
How are you? It's been a bit since we've talked, but how are you and how is your husband Bill doing?
We are doing well. I think part of why we didn't get to chat earlier is just a lot's been going on, a lot of life changes, and being financial planners. You get to see a lot of things, and sometimes things get closer to home. So we've had some family matters we've been dealing with, and helping aging parents, and starting to understand what it really is like to be in that sandwich generation, and it's pretty eye-opening. And I have a whole new respect for people who have been helping parents navigate the aging process, and learning a lot. So it's a busy time.
Folks who may or may not recall our conversations, give a little bit of a background on Cornerstone Investments.
Sure. So we've been in business since the late 90s, and we are financial planners and investment advisors. We are what's considered a fiduciary on behalf of our clients. So we not only help them manage their money, but we help them make those really important financial decisions in their life. Somehow money touches every aspect of our life, and making really good decisions at critical times is important. We have a specialty in working with widows. It's a group of people that just need help, take help, implement it. And they've been such a rewarding group of people to support. And that's just been tremendous. But I can't emphasize enough, the planning side of money is really where it's at. As much as people always want to focus on what was their return on investments, what's the hottest stock, what's happening in the market, it's those day-to-day decisions that you make that impact your finances more than anything else. It's your habits. And having good financial habits is key. And this is a great time of year to talk about them.
What is the importance of staying engaged with one's finances?
Oh, that's a great question to start with. It's the type of thing, I'll put it this way. When you get up in the morning, if you were one of those people who hit snooze all the time, if you're putting snooze on your finances, you are really not setting yourself up for success, because finances are something you need to look at. They need to be on your mind quite frequently. I don't recommend they be like the forefront of your mind all the time, because that could drive you a little bit crazy. But being aware and being conscious and making good decisions is important. So today, let's make a pledge. We're not hitting the snooze button on our finances today. Today is about action. We talked briefly beforehand. There's a woman who has a great saying. It's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch, or action. And that's what today we're going to take action.
Great analogy. I'm somebody who I identify with analogies, and that's a fantastic analogy as to one who may procrastinate when it comes to their finances, or making decisions, or at least staying on top of things that could be red flags or could become major problems with your finances.
And that happens to most of us. We get busy in our lives, we get distracted. I think kind of focusing on finance is fun. Maybe that makes me a nerd about it, but I think it's kind of a game to me, and I want to win at that game. It's like winning at the game of life. And so I think often people, we sometimes put shame, or we put too heavy of emotions tied to finances, and it prevents us from moving forward, rather than being curious and saying, if I tweaked this or I did that, how does that get me closer to my goals? And that's ultimately what it's all about, is having long-term goals that we want to achieve, and making decisions, often baby step decisions every day, finding ways to automate so that it becomes easy. We have a saying, inch by inch, it's a cinch. If you try to eat the elephant all at one time, you can't do it. But if you do those little teeny steps every day or every week, it becomes a cinch.
It's interesting you use that. Mine isn't so much the elephant, it's the sandwich. You don't eat a sandwich in one bite.
Yep.
You nibble away at it, and however you kind of get to finish it, the sandwich is.
Yep.
You want to do it. You don't want to do it all in one bite. What's interesting is that preparing us individually, I had notes. You were kind enough. You always kind of send me information. Like, here's some of the things that we can talk about. And one of the first things on your list actually was something that I wanted to make sure I did during the calendar year 2022.
Yep.
And that is to update, create a budget, and also eliminate any applications or any services that I'm not using. Maybe I signed up from a couple of years ago for something and it's just been on pause since. Talk to us about that.
Oh, that's a great thing. So we live in the age of subscriptions. Everything in our life is a subscription. And it's interesting. So many of us are cutting the cable cord because we're like, oh, I don't want to pay for cable. But what we've added in Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, was it Paramount? I mean, like we went from having free television to like paying for everything. So very easily we do this. I mean, the old standard one is the gym membership. You pay for it. You don't necessarily go, you just suddenly have all these subscriptions in your life. And actually, Bill gave me a gift at Christmas time, and it was this, I don't even remember exactly what it was called, but it was a gear that you put on your head. And what turns out, I said to him, did you realize you had to have a subscription in order to use this piece of technology? He says, I didn't realize that. I was like, well, this gift suddenly is going to cost me every month. So we returned it. It was not a high enough impact, but it's one of those things death by 1,000 cuts. I think it's going to be death to the budget by 1,000 subscriptions, and being aware of that is huge. We were traveling internationally on safari back in November. And for the first time, this credit card got compromised. I've had the credit card since 1997, same number, first time. So one of the benefits of that happening is suddenly it's taken about 3 or 4 months. I'm getting all these notifications like credit card's no longer working. We need you to re-up. So it's forcing me to think like, do I still want to give money to this organization? Do I still want to pay for that? So re-examining your budget and where your money is going is awesome. An awesome opportunity to say, okay, do the spending still align with my values? Like we go walking every morning. We're downtown Plymouth the other day, and it's 7:00 in the morning, and there's somebody's Blue Apron, which is a food subscription, sitting on their front steps, and I'm like, okay, that obviously sat there overnight. They didn't need, they weren't waiting for it. They didn't looking, so that food's probably spoiled, and obviously they weren't waiting, and do they really need it? So it does make you start to think about it.
It's interesting during your comment you mentioned about free TV, and a lot of the younger generation wouldn't know what that is. The older folks understand that there was a time that you could get TV over the air, but this invention of having movie channels and everything, it's become more and more costly. It's interesting you mentioned that because I'm guilty of the same thing of having I actually have cable, but then I also have the like the Fire Stick TV, and I got a little a la carte applications like the Paramount Plus, and we all want to stay up with the latest binge worthy series. It's interesting, and that's excellent advice to at least stay on top of that stuff.
Well, interesting, Kevin, when we moved a couple of years ago, we cut the cable cord, and we actually bought a digital antenna to put in the window. So we get our TV through that digital antenna, and it was $50 to buy it. So it was a one-time cost. So if you can start to think about one-time costs versus continually paying for something, that's a better way to go with your budget too.
Something that a lot of us don't realize until the moment arises, and that is if we need to purchase something, if something happens to a family member, you break down, your car goes on the fritz, not having enough funds to be able to take care of it. How important is it to at least create or at least have an understanding of your emergency fund?
Oh, Kevin, that's another great question. Emergency funds are so important. And just like the name says, emergency, you don't know when it's going to happen. We talk about curveball life planning a lot. Curveballs come out of nowhere. And how do you, how do you react to them? And so having that 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved in the bank, not invested in the market. It's a little painful to see that you're only going to get your 0.01%. But you have to keep it in a liquid form. We had a situation in our overall family. Someone passed away suddenly. Well, if you don't know this, the funeral home, you have to pay them on the spot before the funeral happens. So they do take credit card, but you don't want to be putting all these things on credit cards either, these emergencies. You want to be able to pay them off. So, the car, I actually ran into somebody the other day. His car had a problem and the automatic steering went. So he borrowed his daughter's car. And when he got to the place to park it, that car went. He then had to rely on his girlfriend's car. So he had 2 cars that were going to need major repairs. So really important. And if you are someone who's self-employed, you definitely want to, or you're in a specialty where it's harder to get quick employment, you want to have that plus 6 months saved so that you can navigate it. And preferably it is truly cash in the bank.
I think it's kind of hand in hand, not only having an emergency fund, but also having an understanding of your credit history, because again, you never know when at a moment's notice, yep, you need to borrow money if somebody happens to pass away or if you need to purchase a new vehicle. How important is it to make sure that you clean up your credit history?
Oh, I think it's very important. You want to look, you can get your free look at your credit from each one of the major companies, which I'm not going to have them all right now, TransUnion, Experian, and then there's one other. They will each give you a free look once a year. You want to make sure that your bills have been paid, that you don't have outstanding credit cards that you didn't know about. A lot of times people will have them from stores, the Macy's, the Kohl's, and you forget that you opened that 12 years ago. It's still active against your credit because having a good credit score, that's how much you're going to pay when you borrow money. So you want to get a mortgage, you want the best one you can get because you're locking into that mortgage rate for a long period of time. Same with the car loan. So making sure you don't miss payments. So, on the flip side of that is how do you automate so that, you have automatic bill pay? And this is for younger people and for older people. As we start to get older, we tend to not realize if we paid something. I'm seeing that, as we help family members, you missed that car payment, you missed that insurance payment. That puts your account into some risk, and you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that you're buttoned up on taking care of those matters.
Myself, I use something called Credit Karma, and it gives me updates whenever there's any kind of fluctuation in my credit score. I want to say probably the most horrific score I got. I think I'm saying it incorrectly here. I actually got a notification that for some reason, my credit score plummeted 100 points.
Ooh,
100 points, right?
That's
Usually
big.
it blips up 5, it goes down 3. It's kind of depending on what you have for open credit cards, you have for limits, if you pay your credit cards off. But for some reason, there was some kind of an issue with a credit card. It was a store credit card that I had bought. I had signed up for many years ago. But as you know, through the process, the card gets bought by one company, and another company buys that debt. Another company buys. Before you know it, you have a bigger company. And I had a bigger company that bought the debt. And because there was some kind of an issue as far as I paid it, but it was a day late, and I wasn't aware that they had instituted, a minimal fee to it that it carried over, that they decided to reduce the credit card from, $1,000 to $400, and that limited the amount of credit that I had. that's why I had such a large number. And it's, being aware. And, it was a lesson, that's what life is about, is learning and retaining that information. So this is
Absolutely.
great information you've
Well,
given.
Kevin, as you bring that up, at the beginning of the pandemic, when companies, and especially banks, credit card companies, didn't know what this was going to be about, they started pulling back those credit limits. So maybe this happened to you about that time. And I had a lot of people reaching out to me saying, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything different. But my bank is not allowing me to have this line of credit. My credit card company has dropped, from this amount and they were significant drops. So that's a very good point. So that's another reason to be prepared if that curveball comes. Pandemic was a curveball, and it hit, it hit physically, emotionally, financially, it hit health-wise, it hit in lots of ways.
And if you're just tuning into the program, we are speaking with Paula Harris. She is the co-founder and director of WH Cornerstone Investments, and a valuable resource to talk to us about finances. And we've had so many different conversations over the past few programs that we've had her on. It's fantastic to have you on. Going from credit to talking about somebody who likes to put money in a savings account. I'm somebody who's guilty. I have multiple savings accounts. I stayed with one credit union for so many years. What should I do if I want to do a little bit of a checkup when it comes to my savings account? Should I keep it in that bank, or should I be looking around?
So, the nature of banking has been changing a lot. Excuse me. It's a lot more online. Someone posted on LinkedIn or Facebook the other day, when was the last time you actually went into a bank for a transaction? And I've been a corporator of a bank for a number of years. And, some banks they're not offering Saturday hours anymore. So things are changing. So you need to make sure your bank, you want to make sure people in the bank. That's really important. So they can put your name and face, because when you have, a special request, you want to be able to talk to a human being. So if you are always dealing with, person du jour, and there's no relationship, when you need that favor, or you need a little extra help, they're not going to care about you. So I tend to say the big national banks, steer clear of them. Go to your community, your local bank, the ones that sponsor the Little League, the ones that sponsor the orchestra, the ones that are giving back, you're seeing all the time. So you want to then look at what are the rates. Credit unions do tend to pay a little bit higher rate than banks. So you look and see if that makes sense. Do they offer you the services that you want? How up to date is their online banking system? Is it easy? I have a regular bank. I have a credit union. They have different systems. Some I like better. Credit unions changed theirs a couple of times, and actually at this point it's doing great. The traditional bank has got one that's working pretty well. And so you want to make sure that makes sense. And actually thinking about fees, Kevin, I often will transfer money between the bank and the credit union. I will be patient and wait the 4 days to not take on the fee. If you are, doing that transfer, you can do it more quickly, but it's like a $3 fee. You do that all the time, you're throwing money away. The other thing is to look at their ATM network. Can you get money out that way? So you don't need to worry so much if you're a big bank, you're at the national bank, because the ATM networks will get you what you need, usually with no fees. So definitely making sure that they still meet your needs is really key. And sometimes you can have a local bank, even though you moved across the country. Nowadays, you can still keep that bank. It's very easy with mobile banking.
So transitioning from talking about savings to, sucking away money for the one day that you can retire.
Yeah.
How important is it to take a look at what we're doing for our contributions when it comes to retirement, IRAs, and such?
So this is a great time of year to talk about this, because it's tax time.
Yep.
So we are more in tune with our money than probably any other time of the year. So some of you may have already filed your taxes and gotten paid your fee, or gotten your money back, or you may still be waiting until this year. Nationally, it's April 18th that you have to have it filed by. And locally, we are April 19th because of Evacuation Day in Boston. That sets the deadline a little bit later for us. So For people who are contributing to IRAs, you want to make sure that you have made your contribution for last year, 2021, before that tax filing deadline and before you file your taxes. So you want to look and say, okay, am I going to put it into a traditional IRA, which, depending on how much you make, you'll be able to write off that. Or if you're going to put it into a Roth IRA. So just to clarify again, the difference between a traditional and a Roth. A traditional, you're going to take the tax deferment today. Your money will go in and it will grow tax-free. But when you take it out, you will have to pay taxes, and that will be in retirement. If you do a Roth and there's certain phase out limits, you can make too much money to contribute to a Roth. But assuming you can contribute to the Roth, you're going to say, I'm going to pay the taxes on this money now. It's going to grow tax-free, and then it's going to come out tax-free in retirement. Big, big deal. So you want to be doing everything you can to save towards retirement. Retirement is going to be a long period of time. And it's going to be expensive. And I think people forget it's that constant pull of the immediate gratification today for that long-term gratification, basically living and having enough money and staying independent for tomorrow. So taking advantage of any retirement plans that are offered through work, you want to be looking at that. You want to contribute, ideally, if you can contribute the max, that's terrific. And if you aren't contributing the max, you want to keep dialing it up each year. Dial it up another percent, dial it up another percent. So that's another thing you should be looking at. What's your contribution rate at the moment, and how can you keep increasing it? Oh, and while we're on this topic, Kevin, this is a great time of year to check your beneficiaries. Do you have named the people that you want to have named to basically inherit that money if you pass away? So, if you're married, it would be your spouse, but you want to make sure you name contingencies, because what if something, that curveball comes and it affects both of you? So having your contingencies named is really important. You don't want to name minor children, but you can name other adults, people over 18, but check your beneficiaries. Are the people still living? A lot of people will name a parent, and then they went off and got married, and like that parent doesn't make sense anymore. Or, you named a sibling, you named one sibling, but the other one was a minor, so you didn't name them. Is it time to name, check and update both because everybody's of age? Great time of year to do this too.
It's interesting. You actually anticipated my segue, because I wanted to jump into. I'm kind of ticking down the list, but I'm also like taking things out of order and trying to put them in a perspective way, and that is estate planning. Now, I've never heard of a file of life card. What is that?
Oh, yes, a file of life card is tremendous. So this, sadly, working from home more often. One day I'm looking out, and my neighbor's yard, I see the ambulance, the police car, the fire truck, and another emergency vehicle go down there. Turns out my neighbor passed away, and he had been found deceased in his home. And sadly, there's no next of kin, and they're trying to figure out, what do we do? Who do they contact? And there was no file of life card. So talking to the police officer, he's like, geez, we look for those file of life cards at any age. I often think of them as somebody older. So they're a red card. They come, one has a magnet, and you put it on your refrigerator. The smaller one is something you'd carry in your wallet. So emergency personnel are trained to look for the file of life card. On that card will have your contact information, your medications, who your doctors are, who your next of kin are, phone numbers, all those important things. Some people will write, do not resuscitate across it. That's usually people who are older or have some type of major illness, and they know they do not want to be resuscitated. But so important. We actually just sent these out to all of our clients last week, and have been getting emails back saying, thank you so much. One woman in her mid-70s, she said, my father's always had one of these, but I never thought it applied to me. And we've sent them to our clients who are in their 20s. We sent them to the clients in their 90s. It is something everyone should have, because, you're driving a car and you have a seizure. You're 28 years old. The emergency personnel that gets there needs to know what's happening with you. They need to know if you took some medication or you didn't take some medication. Very, very important. I put that under the estate planning umbrella, because you want to be prepared and buttoned up. This is letting people know, your wishes, what's happening in your life, really important. And where you can get them, you can order them. There's I think it's fileoflife.org. It's online. Most fire departments will have them, and you could stop into your fire department and ask for one. Senior centers, they will accept anybody, young or old, to come in. They usually have them, and they would give them out as well. Very important. That's my new mission, is to make sure everybody's getting a File of Life card and that they take action and fill it out. Really important.
Again, we're speaking with Paula Harris. She is with the Cornerstone Investment. Paula, we just have a couple of minutes. I can't believe the time has flown.
It has flown.
If there's anything that we haven't touched upon, but you feel is the final thing that we mentioned, because there were a couple of things we didn't talk about: insurance policies or organizing your documents, but also setting goals for the year ahead.
Yeah, I guess the most important, checking your insurance would be really important. Goals are always important, but making sure, do you have an umbrella policy? What has changed in your life? As somebody ages, you might want to, and maybe driving becomes a little sketchy. When you have a new driver coming on, or you have an older driver, you want to make sure you've got your collision numbers up high, because if there's an issue, you want to be able to, get the best insurance for that. You want to make sure, do you need to start thinking about long-term care? As we, how do you plan to take care of yourself in those later years? Insurance, life insurance, do you still have a need for it? Maybe the kids are all grown and you don't need it. We've come across clients with whole life policies, but with adult children, and there's just no need. They're single at this point. There's no need for that policy, but they're paying 20 grand for it. Maybe you reposition assets in another way. So really important to look that you're properly insured across different categories: your home, your auto, your life, and your long-term care. Do you have the right health insurance? That's a big deal. Are you, these companies, they deny a lot, HMOs, if you're in an HMO and you need some longer term care, you've got a family member who needs to go into rehab. A lot of the rehab places won't take someone with an HMO. These are things you want to know ahead of time rather than find out at the last minute.
Oh, last question for you. And that is,
yes.
if folks have been enticed or have any questions in regards to any of this conversation that you and I have had, how can they reach out to you? Sure.
Very available. Our website is whcornerstone.com. Can reach out through there. They have a great system on there called Drift. You can ask a question. We're on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. So you can follow us there to get great tips and learn more about what we're doing, or reach out to those channels as well. Or call the office. The number's right on our website. Happy to reach out. We want to make sure people get good information.
Well, Paula, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin.
That will do it for our show. Thank you so much for tuning into CrossTalk today. My name is Kevin Tocci, and until next time, have yourself a great day.